Thanks, Jamie. And thanks to Heather Houston, who's providing us music as well this morning. And I just want to, it's really great that we've had so many musicians who've been able to support us through COVID and keep us going. And hopefully in the next couple weeks or months or so, we're going to have more live music in the building now that we're sort of shifting gears. So let's begin, as always, by taking a few breaths together. So get yourself a little more settled. Exhale first. Take a deep breath in. And let go. Take another deep breath. And let go. One more deep breath in. And let go. And so I always invite us to begin with just a few collective breaths. Because, as you may or may not know, I believe that it is in our collective focus. It's in the overlap of consciousness. It's in that space. Anytime a group of people are focusing on the same thing at the same time, something more becomes available. I believe it's for that something more that we come together in community. I know many of you might meditate in your practice, and I know that for many of us, we often have an easier experience of meditating when we're sitting in a room full of people meditating, as opposed to just sitting at home. It's like sometimes we're sitting on our cushion at home and we're meditating, and it's like, okay, 2 minutes has gone by. How long has it been? But if you're in a room full of people, there's something more that just seems to emerge, right? And so we always begin with a shared breath to just activate, to step into, to cultivate that something more together. And our theme of the month across Centers for Spiritual Living nationwide, as well as in this organization here for the month, and the theme for this week, is reaching higher. And I really believe that it's into that something more that we are constantly being taught to reach. That, I don't know about you, if you watch the news, I do, or if you are just a perceiving human walking around having life in this interesting world we're all sharing, but there's a lot going on that is continuously available to pull our attention, and in a way to pull our attention down. There is so much happening in the world that needs our attention or is grabbing our attention, and it seems to me like much of the media, much of the world around us, maybe it's just human nature, tends to want to grab onto the stuff that really has the most energy. Right? And so if you turn on the news, if you talk to people, it's often about what's going on that's really pulling us down. There's a lot of gravity, there's a lot of weight, there's a lot of stuff going on. And all of it requires our attention. We're moving through a remarkable moment of shift and transition in the world and our nation, even here in this community. We've just had a transition of ministers. Reverend Alice's last week was last week. My first week is this week. Here we go. New story, right? We're in the midst of transition here. We're also living in a nation that seems to be more and more divided. There are more and more issues rising up that are really urgently calling for our attention. There's the political division, there's the racial oppression, there's the collapse of the environment around us. You could look out and realize how much is happening that's grabbing our attention, saying, look at this, look at this, look at this. There's the hurricane just ran across this whole swath from Louisiana to New York. There's flooding and damage everywhere. There's been a lot happening in our individual lives. I know myself, in the last 4 months, I've lost 4 people that I care about. I know that a number of people in this community have lost loved ones recently. Almost everywhere I turn, I'm talking to someone who's suffering through something. Some kind of loss, some kind of transition, some kind of difficult change. It seems to be happening everywhere. And all of this is here to grab our attention. And yet we have this theme this month and this week that says we have to reach higher. It's time to reach higher. And I think that the purpose of spirituality, the purpose of our practice, if you will, is to be in the balance of acknowledging what's happening in the world, of seeing all that's rising up to grab our attention, but also looking to a higher vision, looking to a possibility, looking to a deeper truth. And I've had a lifelong journey with anxiety and depression. Many of you know this. And that when I was younger, I used to walk around like this a lot, as when I was a little kid. And there's a point where I think I'm about 12 years old, and I'm on a family vacation, and my uncle, who his family taught and participated in martial arts, saw me walking like this, and he pulled me aside, and I was Christopher back then, so it was Christopher. He said, you need to stand up. You need to lift up your shoulders. You need to look higher. You need to look in a different way. That if you're always walking around like this, you're telling yourself something about yourself. Yeah. You're also telling the world something about yourself. And so he said, look up. Just when you walk, just look up. And throughout the course of my life, my uncle's voice has always been in my head, that whenever I feel that, I want to stand up a little bit more. So I want you to do something. Just for a moment, bend your head down and look like this. At the floor, at your shoes, whatever. And just let your shoulders kind of slump and just feel how you feel when you're just kind of looking down. Now take a breath, come back up. And this time, reach up. Maybe even lift your eyebrows, smile a little bit, and just reach up. And notice how you feel in your body. And just come back, take another breath, and just observe the difference in the messaging, the signaling, the thinking, the feeling that's happening in your body, whether you're looking down or whether you're looking up. It's dramatic. That just the physical act of lifting your eyes up actually causes things to happen in your brain that makes you feel a little happier. So in this idea of reaching up, I want us to take this physical experience we just had and look at this metaphorically. In Centers for Spiritual Living and Science of Mind, and this philosophy that we teach here, we have this V symbol that represents the teaching. And if you make it like this, you could be the V. And that up here in the open part of the V is spirit, is all of the abstract, is all of the potential, are all the divine patterns of goodness, of vision. And then down here at the bottom of the V is manifestation, is reality, is physical experience. And I want us to think about this idea that we live in a world of cause and effect. That we live in a world that first comes through focus, through attention, through mental creation, through perception, and then it channels itself into our experience as our physical experience. And much of the experience, I believe, that we have in the world points us to the effects. It points us to the effects of what's happening. We see the circumstances that are involving in our life. We see the effects of our participation with the environment and what's unfolding in the world around us. We see the effects of racism. We see the effects of our politics. We see the effects of the division. And it shows up as pain in our physical bodies. It shows up as poverty. It shows up as all of the difficult and uncomfortable experiences that we and other people might be having in the world. And the media, the world around us, maybe again human nature, says, let's look at the effects. Let's look at all the stuff. And in a way, that's kind of like, in our little symbol here, looking at what's down here at the bottom. And remember that when we're looking like this, it only allows us to see and feel so much. When I was walking around looking at my shoes most of the time, I didn't see how beautiful the world was around me. And so spirituality tells us, don't look at all this stuff down here. Look up here. Look to the vision. Look to the possibility. Look to what could be. But we've all met spiritual people who walk around the world like this, who are a little scary. Because they're so focused on the positive and so focused on the good and so focused on what could be that we tend to just run over and ignore all the actual real stuff that's happening in the world. And the challenge, the invitation, is to find balance between these two things. Is to look at the world of effects, to look at all of the things that are unfolding in our individual lives, in our society, and in the environment, but not look at them at the level of effect. Start asking questions about the level of cause. That we see the issues in the world. Do we get fixated on what is or what was? Or do we use our ability to think and imagine into a higher place to ask questions about what is the root cause of this, and how can I be the cause for something different? How can I become a cause where a new effect begins to emerge in the world, where a new circumstance, where a new situation becomes to unfold because of me as the cause of it? Because one of the things that we teach here is that consciousness is cause of everything. That everything that shows up in the world is in some way a manifestation of consciousness, whether it's individual or collective consciousness that's manifesting around us. And so if we remember that the cause of things is what is coming from our consciousness, from our perception, from the way that we engage with them, then I think the invitation is to begin to start thinking of ourselves as causal agents of change. And that all the stuff that's unfolding down here for us to look at, all of it is there as invitation. And the invitation is to then ask, what is the cause of this? Not to be stuck on the effect. And so often, we like to hang on to the effects because they're more familiar to us, because we know them, because we're in them. And I found out recently on my exploration of what I like to call YouTube University, is that we all have something called a familiarity bias. Did you know this? I just learned this. You have a familiarity bias, which basically means that anytime you see something that you've seen before, your brain gives you a little shot of dopamine. Yet anytime you experience something familiar, your brain rewards you and says, yep, this is good in some way, even if it's something that's not good. That oftentimes we'd rather stay in the familiar, we'd rather keep repeating the story and looking at what is, looking at what was, and just perpetuating it, rather than stepping into a mystery, stepping into a zone of discomfort, stepping into something that we may not know the answer to, and start looking for a new idea. Because when we start looking to new ideas, when we start looking higher, something more becomes available. You know, we've all heard the Einstein quote, or whoever it is that actually said it, but you can't solve a problem at the level of mind that created it. We have to rise to a new level of thinking in order to come up with new solutions. And so when we stay down in the repeating of the story, when we keep going back to how it happened last time, or the first time I got here, or when I first met that person, or when we spoke about this thing last week, when we keep talking about whatever that is, we're in a sense rewarding ourselves by continuing the story. And the difficult part is, and the challenge, and the perhaps uplifting thing to do, is to again go back to this question of cause. And instead of repeating, this is how it was last time, which gives us that little dopamine reward because it was familiar, instead we could step out a little bit and say, but what would I like it to be like next time? And start telling that story. What I wish had happened was, what I hope happens for the next person is, as opposed to just going on and on and on and on and on and on and on about the story. Because again, whatever the story is that's familiar is the easiest thing to turn to. But the easy thing isn't the thing that causes our brain to grow. The easy thing isn't what causes us to grow and evolve as individuals and as beings. You know, if we want to keep the brain alive and growing and keep that great neuroplasticity and neurogenesis going, it's about learning new things. It's about stepping out of our comfort zone. It's about doing something new. You know, we say that if you want to keep your mind-body system active as you age, keep doing new things. You know, if you're 70 and you want to, activate your brain, start learning a new language. You know, it's like take on something challenging and new. That's what pushes us to grow. Remaining in our comfort zone does not push us to grow. Comfortable people don't change. You giggle because it's true. And so, I really believe that one of the greatest spiritual practices that we can cultivate for ourselves is to become comfortable being uncomfortable. Is to learn that we don't grow inside of our comfort zone. And so that what we have to do is start figuring out where it is and being willing to step out a little bit and see what's over here. And oftentimes, again, our comfort zone is just what we know. And that branching out of what we know might actually be the thing that causes us to grow. That looking to a different perspective can help us shift the story that we're living in right now. Because if we think about this cause-effect balance and this nature of attention, that whatever we focus on, we get more of. Whatever we give our energy to grows. Are we focusing on the effects, or are we focusing on the cause? Focusing on what is, or are we focusing on what could be? And I think that that is a really incredible invitation for us, not only in this community as we emerge and grow together in this new story, in this new chapter, but also as we participate in the ever-changing, fluxing, shifting world around us. If you believe in science, which I think some of us here do, we have a crisis in front of us on an environmental scale, on a global scale. And that crisis is trickling down into all the different areas and arenas of our lives. And I know, as someone who's in my mid to late 30s, that I'm going to live through a lot more difficult times in my life than I've lived through now. And all of that is the effect of a lot of unconscious cause that has been participated in and perpetuated by generations. And now we're at this point where I believe that this shift perspective, this training of spiritual mental awareness, we should approach it as if it is a life and death necessity. Do we approach our spirituality as if our lives are on the line? Do we approach our thinking as if the planet is on the line? Do we approach this spiritual mental philosophy that we have here, do we approach it as if people's lives are affected by how we live this out? Or do we just focus it on ourselves and say, I want to just find peace within myself. I want to find my good. I want to manifest the things that I want. Or do we see that this philosophy is actually about creating deep change, not only for ourselves, but for all people? And are we constantly lifting our attention higher so that we are seeking a greater vision, so that we're seeking a greater perspective, so that we're seeking that uplift to bring us to a new perspective? I have one more thought that I'm going to share before we wrap up, which is that in the Buddhist tradition, there's a concept of the metta prayer that says, whatever it is that you want to pray for yourself, whatever it is, if you're seeking a certain kind of healing, if you have a need in your life that needs to be met, create a prayer, word your prayer in a way that includes the most people or the most life possible. And so if you are suffering from some kind of pain, that your prayer becomes, may all people who are suffering in any way find relief from their suffering. Because what happens is that when you put your mind and your consciousness and your prayerfulness onto an idea that includes more people than yourself, you activate that power of collective. That when you pray for more than just yourself, you are engaging in a larger prayer. You are engaging in a larger field of consciousness. And in Lynn McTaggart's book, The Power of Eight, and in The Intention Experiment, she talks about doing sort of medical research on people while they're focusing and praying. And it turns out that the more self-centered your prayers are, the more of a sort of withering effect they have on your cells and on your body. And the more altruistic and the greater and more inclusive your prayers are, your thoughts are, they're actually enlivening and rejuvenating to the cells and to the body system. And so this idea of reaching higher being an invitation for us this week and this month as we begin to walk out this practice is to start looking at the world around us, at your own life, and looking at all the things that are showing up and pulling your attention, and finding a way to look at whatever it is that's showing up for you, and asking questions about the cause, not getting fixated on the effect. And say, where can I act upon this cause in some way that brings greater good for the most people possible? Because whatever's up for you is up for somebody else. Whatever you see is there because it needs to be seen. And so let's create a practice, individually and collectively, of seeking to look higher, of cultivating a prayerful awareness about whatever it is that's coming our direction, and trying to find a way to lift those prayers up to a more global level, to a more societal level, to take the shift away from me and really bring it to the collective and to the we. That what if our good, our idea of manifestation and law of attraction and all of this creative manifestation magic we talk about here, what if all of that is actually about creating the good of the world and the good of society, of which you are a part? But it's not about creating our individual personal good. It's about creating a thriving world where we all get to thrive together. And so if you will, just take a deep breath. If it's comfortable for you, close your eyes. Take another deep breath in. And as you just take a moment to breathe, I invite you to just contemplate for a moment, what is something in your life, in the world, that has your attention, that has a lot of weight? Something painful or difficult? And just name it in your mind, whatever that is. And then in your own way, in your own words, in your own mind, can imagine for a moment that there are other people who are suffering or struggling with this same thing. And so just whisper into your mind right now a sentence, an affirmation, or a prayer that just says, may all people who, whatever that thing is in your own mind, be released from it, be elevated from it. But create a mental construct in your mind that you are part of a pool of individuals who are praying the same prayer with you. And so take another deep breath in. And as we breathe together, let us just be once again in the awareness that there is something greater than we are that is breathing us. That each one of us is indeed being breathed by the universe. That there is perhaps one seamless presence that is living and breathing throughout the entirety of existence. That there is one life, one heart, one mind. I call it consciousness, I call it the universe. Some of us might even call it God. But let us remember that this infinite presence is the sea of all possibility. And that each one of us is a place where this universal consciousness funnels itself into existence, into experience, through our attention, through our intention. That each one of us is a place where evolution and creation is happening. And so as we look to the world around us and we see all of the effects, all that is bubbling up, all that needs our attention, all that needs our healing, all that needs our participation, let us lift our awareness up and begin to look for the deeper cause. To realize that there is a truth, that there is a deeper presence that lives and breathes within each one of us that is seeking to reveal something greater. And so as we choose to participate in life, let that something greater emerge in, through, and as our perspective, so that we begin to look higher, so that we begin to look to the solution, so that we begin to look to the vision, so that we become a people of possibility. And that when we see what is unfolding in the world, we see that there is a call for something new, for something more, for a change to take place within us. And so I just speak a word of gratitude today for each person here, for each person hearing these words, for each person's commitment to walk this out in a new way, to look up, to feel the uplift, and to know that when we look to higher perspectives, new awareness becomes available. And from that new awareness, we can see solutions, we can see answers, we can see possibilities, paths, and doorways that weren't there before. And so as we continue to cultivate an awareness of looking higher, of reaching up into the something more, we know that a new way makes itself available to us, so that we can together be the movement towards the emergence of a world that works, where everyone thrives. And so let us once again remember, my friends, that there is indeed a power for good in this universe that is so much greater than we are. And yet it is coursing through us, it is flowing through us, it is looking and being through us in every moment. And so let us remember that we are the universe alive, that we are evolution unfolding. Let us each remember that thou art God, my friends. And so it is.